Welcome to the Endpoints Podcast. I'm Jonathan Gang. Today on the show, we're taking an opportunity to introduce ourselves. As you probably know, Endpoints is a production of the ALS Therapy Development Institute. To give our listeners a better idea of the story behind the organization, I spoke with two people whose job it is to tell it. Senior Director of Development Carol Hamilton and Community Outreach and Engagement Specialist Gabrielle Belletti. They're responsible for sharing ALS TDI's mission with the people who support our research and those in the ALS community. Here's what they had to say about how we got started, how we keep everything funded, and how we pursue our goal of finding effective treatments for ALS.
You know, the way this place started was from the love of a brother. Here is a family in Newton, Massachusetts with a 27-year-old stud of a kid who has ALS, and a mom who sat in a waiting room praying that it was going to be a brain cancer diagnosis instead of an ALS one, because she knew there was at least hope and treatments for brain cancer. It was ALS. Stephen Haywood was diagnosed with ALS when he was 27. His family were all MIT-trained engineers, and the engineering approach to a problem is, what can I build to fix it? So what they built was how we were known originally was the ALS Therapy Development Foundation. They didn't know at the time if they would be sending money out or building something internally to keep money in. So really, this was because a genius family loved their son and brother and wanted to solve this problem for him and hopefully for everybody else. Now, what was really cool about it was they were kind of starting at a really great time. The first genetic mutation relevant to ALS, SOD1, had recently been discovered by Bob Brown, who was at Mass General at the time. And we needed to characterize that mutation into an animal model to test drugs in. No one had ever really tested drugs in ALS. We didn't know, I'm being somewhat cavalier, but we didn't know if aspirin cured ALS. There was no way to test it. Pharmaceutical companies did not see a market. And academic programs were really looking at the biology, the etiology, the mutations, the genetic discoveries. So no one was translating that into something that could be helpful for patients. Going back to the aspirin analogy, their job was at first to look at the low-hanging fruit. Were there FDA-approved compounds in other disease indications that could be potentially efficacious in ALS? We didn't know. So now, with the SOD1 mutation discovered and ALS TDI, then F, doing the work to characterize that model and make it relevant to drug development, there are ways to test to see if aspirin cured ALS or not. So these guys came at it from the beginning with a real drug development viewpoint, which pissed people off, in all honesty, right? Who did we think we are? You know, these brothers out of Newton, telling academics how to do this. We were the medical research guerrillas in the beginning. And academics like to, kind of at the time, sit above and kind of swat us away. And that was understandable. But we knew that it had been 60 years since Lou Gehrig stood on that pitcher's mound, and nothing had changed. So maybe the way we were going about it in this disease was wrong.
There's a lot of things that make the organization the Haywoods created stand out, but there's one in particular that makes it unique. It's one of the world's only non-profit biotech companies.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit biotech, so it's a little bit of an oxymoron, right? Because what do you mean nonprofit biotech? But because we started from a family trying to save the life of their family member, we feel like we're obligated to other families. And so we're actually funded by the people who have this disease and by people who care about people who have this disease and helping us to stop it. And so, that's kind of a good and bad thing, right? Because it kind of stinks that the people who have this disease also have to fund the research to try to cure the disease. But it's also a good thing because that means that we don't have investors. We don't have the threat of somebody pulling in investments if we, fail on an experiment. It's like we go right into the next experiment. So that's kind of how this organization works. People, from throwing bake sales at schools, we get like $200 from little kids baking cookies and giving us the proceeds, to, people hosting larger fundraisers, to our 4 signature events that we have throughout the year to raise money. And that's kind of how we work. I think what makes us unique is that so many people who work at TDI are personally connected to ALS. They have lost their siblings, their mothers, their fathers, their best friends to this disease. And so for us and for the people who work here, it's not just a typical 9-to-5 job. There are days where we cry hysterically. There are days we take this home with us. There are times where I'm emailing somebody at 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday because I want to make sure that they have the answer that they're looking for, and that time is of the essence. So I think that that's what makes us different. It's that we genuinely, truly care about the people that we're trying to help and trying to save.
One of the other reasons that our nonprofit status is really great is if you are somebody in the ALS community that wants to invest in any way, who cares about speeding drugs to patients. If you have money to spend, and this is your priority, you could do one of 2 things to speed drugs to patients. You could go buy a ton of stock in a pharmaceutical company and demand a board position, and then tell them you don't care about their programs and all of the other indications, and tell them you want them solely to focus on ALS. Or you can make a philanthropic investment in a nonprofit biotech at ALS TDI. Those are your only options.
But it's not just how we fund our science that sets ALS TDI apart. It's also the singular focus and wealth of expertise to be found in our lab.
So the science side, there are 32 of them. Here, right when you walk in the door, you're going to see our offices, and behind you are the rooms in which there's more scientific firepower aimed at this disease than anywhere else on the planet. There are 32 people in that room on that science side who work 24 hours a day. If they're asleep, we've got robots running to end this disease. Now, we have to raise the money to do that. So there are 2 sides to ALS TDI, all of which integrate really nicely. There is the science side, and there is the operations side. Really, one side kind of raises the money, and the other side spends it as quickly as we can. No endowment here. We're investing today. So on the operations side here at ALS TDI, we have the development team, which is my team, who works with families, helps them as much as we can, helps them to understand the scientific landscape in ALS, and we develop relationships, and they understand how genuinely we are invested in solving this disease. They come to the lab, they see it for themselves. So we have the development team who's raising the money individually. We have a marketing team who works diligently to create further awareness and broaden our market and the message around ALS TDI. We have an IT team that freaking rocks, who helped to build the precision medicine program on the science side and builds us tools on the operations side to be able to reach our market and our constituency as effectively as possible. And we all work together because I can't send development directors to meet a family if they don't understand the science. So what happens here, if you walk in at lunchtime, you're going to walk into what we call the MIT, which is kind of our kitchen, our family room, and you're going to see scientists and development people and marketing people and IT people and people who work on the precision medicine program all talking about what they do. So we're all in this together. The teams integrate really well, but it really is about raising the money and spending it as fast as possible.
All of this wouldn't be possible without our most important collaborators, those living with ALS and the larger ALS community.
My favorite thing, one of my favorite things, there are a lot of things I love to do, but one of my favorite things to do is to be able to talk to families who have a recent member of their family who's been diagnosed with ALS. Now, certainly, I wish that no family had that, and I can't wait for the party on the day that when a family does get an ALS diagnosis, we have a pill to hand them. But in the meantime, there is a, kind of a mantra, an unappealing one that we hear in the community, and that is when people are diagnosed with this disease, they sense this diagnose and adios from clinicians. Certainly not all, and some, are delivering that message without even realizing it, because there are an awful lot of great clinicians out there. But patients, people with ALS, feel like, okay, they just sent me home and I don't understand what's going on. I've had people in the community tell me that their doctors didn't tell them about clinical trials. That's where we can help. We can add value. I can't deliver a treatment to that person today. I promise to God that I am working my butt off, as are all of the people here, to do that. But I can help you today by helping families to understand the research landscape, to understand what a clinical trial does. I can help them understand what trials are out there and available to them. We can give them hope. We work with community members when they come in. That's one of my other favorite things, and it's going to happen shortly in a few minutes. A dad of someone who's been diagnosed with ALS is going to get to come into this building and see that there are real people who are dedicated to saving his son. I often think about how isolating this disease is, and you think about medical research, right, and you kind of envision this ivory tower that's impenetrable, and there are automatons in there who won't communicate with you, or inhuman in some way. They're only conceptual. They're freaking real here. And people in the community can come here and thank the scientists who are working for them, encourage and inspire those scientists. That's an incredible gift we can give to people who are walking out of doctor's appointment feeling hopeless. So I am pleased to be able to do that. We work with the community in terms of advocacy, and we work with the community in terms of development and fundraising. It is a shame that the families who are stricken with ALS are the ones who seemingly have to step up to the plate to help fund its cure. They're certainly the ones who are mobilized and all of that, but we need the rest of the world to help these guys because they're dealing with a pretty full plate already. So we're out there with the community trying to spread awareness and develop the funds to end this thing.
To learn more about ALS TDI and how you can support our mission, visit our website, www.als.net. That's www.als.net. Thanks for listening.